Welcome to Strip Coverlet. I'm Adrian Fort.
And I'm Alexis Carr.
And we're here for something that has not happened on Strip Coverlet in over 6 months now, believe it or not, a variety hour. Take it away, Alexis.
You always do this.
People are watching.
Why do you do this?
Gotta talk.
Oh,
Go.
Always put him on the spot. Yeah. Okay. What?
Say something.
Something.
Alexis is enrolled at Missouri Western University, correct?
Right.
That's where I got my bachelor's degree. What are you going for?
I'm getting a bachelor's in animation and a minor in art history.
What will you do with the minor?
With the minor, it's more just like a stepping stone to be able to get into the master's program
Okay.
for art history.
What would you do with a master's in art history?
Hopefully be able to get a job as a curator and conserving artwork.
So art's your thing, huh?
Right.
Specific artists?
Probably, if I had to say now, it would be Francisco Goya.
Goya, huh?
Mm-hmm.
What about
Goya.
Francisco Goya's that get you?
He does a lot of, not surreal, but it almost borderlines the surreal with the real.
Just tell us a little bit about who Goya was.
Goya was a Spanish painter in the 18th century. He first started out doing commissions for a local church, and from there he started making his name.
What are some of his notable works? Or your favorite works of his?
My favorite work from him would probably be Madhouse.
Madhouse.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about Madhouse.
Madhouse.
I'm interested in why you would choose Madhouse.
Right. Well, basically, it's a scene depicting what the title suggests, madhouse. There's figures in the foreground and just different stages of insanity, really.
But it's the background that really catches your eye in Madhouse, isn't it?
Right. You have to... I can't remember if it's the
Pull
right
up a separate tab. Pull up a separate tab right now and Google, spell his name. So everyone knows.
Francisco, F-R-A... I'm terrible at spelling. Why would you do this? See, now I'm going to look stupid if I
N-C-I-S-C-O?
Yes, Francisco...
G-O-Y-A?
Yeah, G-O-Y-A. Francisco Goya.
Madhouse.
Yeah.
And just take a look at that painting and see what stands out to you.
See if you can find...
Yeah, it's like Where's Waldo?
Right.
But it's not Waldo.
No, not that kind of Waldo.
What is it that's going on in the background?
In the background, if I remember correctly, there's people on the ground, kind of in multiple... just levels of stupor. There's almost a guy that with one of the old colonial hats that looks like he's kind of talking to a wall and he's trying to fight, demons that just aren't there.
Which might be a literary reference, right?
It could be, yeah.
Yeah. And what else is going on back there?
I don't know if I want to ruin it for
Okay,
people
you
to
don't have
vote.
to say it. That's fine.
Well, I mean,
But you should definitely look up the painting.
Right. I think it would be better if you actually find it yourself. I'll just say right hand corner.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's the right hand.
Yeah. Look there.
So who are some other artists that have influenced you to go down this route with going through an art history degree?
Right, because it's kind of, how do we say in the field, useless. But...
Unless you got the full degree, right? I mean, if you got the master's and the doctorate.
Right, you can actually start doing some things with that. Let's see, there's just so many. Toulouse-Lautrec, he was a very interesting character.
How do you spell that?
Oh, why are you doing this to me?
Just the last name.
Lautrec. L-A-U-T-R-E-C.
Okay. This is one I've never heard
Right.
of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Toulouse-Lautrec. He's a French impressionist painter.
Okay.
With him, it's more, he was just a more interesting character, I think. I can't remember what the condition he had, but he basically didn't get over about 4 foot. So he was very small in stature. So with that, at the time, we're talking late 1800s, so you were definitely getting ostracized.
Yeah.
Like you just
You weren't
kind of
having a
an
manual
outcast.
labor job.
Right, which was kind of funny because he came from a rich background. So his parents were loaded. He didn't have to work a day in his life. He didn't have to do anything if he didn't want to. But he picked up paintbrush and
So you said it was his lifestyle that sort of is more interesting to you than his artwork?
Right, he liked prostitutes.
Oh, well, that's actually in the art world. Those are two things that are not uncommon. Am I wrong about that?
Right. Basically, if you're seeing a lot of figures of women, if they aren't specifically mentioned as being a specific person, it's probably a working girl who's posing.
That is post Caravaggio, though, right? Caravaggio sort of made his name doing that.
Right. I mean, they've been doing that.
But before that, they were using young boys as models for girls, right?
Definitely.
That's why a lot of
the figures were definitely more masculine. Like if you look at the Sistine
and
Chapel,
the breasts look sort of just plopped on as opposed to organic.
Right.
What about some other artists? Give people something to Google.
Right. Okay, so you have Goya, definitely. Toulouse-Lautrec. Well, let's see.
Toulouse-Lautrec.
Yeah, there's just so many. Who's another one that really stands out?
Time's ticking.
I know.
Pressure's on.
I know.
You're supposed to be good at this.
I know, right?
You're getting an education in it.
Exactly.
What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing?
There's just so many. Okay.
Just name one.
Okay.
Who's someone you like to Google? Who's someone?
Degas.
Degas. Okay.
Degas. He's really good.
What's his first name?
Edgar.
Edgar Degas.
Mhm.
Okay.
I guess. Well, I guess technically it's. Yeah, Degas. Like you'd say.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was also
French.
French Impressionist painter around the same time as Lautrec. I came across a pretty good quote from him just a couple days ago, actually. I believe it's what is it? In painting, you must give the idea of the true by means of the false. And with his work, it was all about taking a scene and kind of giving you a snapshot, but not really telling you all that's there. You almost have to come up with the story yourself, but it's actually a picture.
Yeah, his paintings are reminiscent of Hemingway's writing.
Okay.
In that you have a scene and you know something's going on.
Right.
But no one tells you what it is.
Right. Right. You're just looking at a snapshot, kind of almost like you're like voyeurism, like you're just looking at people. So I think he probably did a lot of people watching, I would imagine.
And prostitutes.
And prostitutes.
He did prostitutes too?
I mean...
Probably.
I mean, it's 1800s France, if you're not... I mean...
What are you doing with your life?
Right. So...
But for you, the art history is a secondary passion, right? Like on this channel, the literature is the secondary passion, but writing for me is the primary passion. But you were also an artist, correct?
I guess you could call me an artist.
This one's hers, right here. I don't know if you can see that in the frame right now, but that one's hers. So that is... Your primary major is animation, correct?
Right.
Why did you choose animation?
Well, animation I've always been interested in. Also doing like graphic noveling and kind of going that route. But it kind of now has turned more into a way to actually just be able to make some money while I'm actually pursuing the artist life, because they don't call them starving artists for nothing. So
stuff's very expensive.
Right. So being able to have not necessarily a backup, but being able to actually provide the income needed to pursue what you really want to do.
Have a career with your pen.
Right.
Right. Okay, so Alexis has a DeviantArt, that's right? DeviantArt?
Yes.
DeviantArt account, which I will do my best to interweb into the description below, where you can go check out some of her other works. How would you describe your own work? Or do you have artistic influences first, I guess? That would be a good question.
Influences, probably, as far as drawing, which is really kind of my main focus, what I'm really pretty good at.
Practiced at.
I'd say. But, MC Escher He was a big influence.
Really?
Yes.
What? Because I've seen a lot of your works, and I would not necessarily say that's inspired by Escher. So what is it from Escher that you've decided to take on as your own? What elements?
I guess
say the heavy contrast between dark and light. What is that
right.
What is that? Between dark and light. The contrast, heavy contrast in your pieces.
Well, you could either call it chiaroscuro or a tenebrism.
Tenebrism, that's the
either,
one. Yeah.
They're kind of interchangeable.
Yeah.
Sort of.
So is that maybe what?
Right, that, and I always liked the way there was almost a grainy look to a lot of his work.
Okay.
There was definitely shading and blending going on, but it really didn't look photographically perfect.
Okay.
If that makes sense. Like, you could actually see, okay, I can see the grains in the paper. I can see where the hand actually made these marks.
Right. So it's almost like it looks real, but you can't see well.
Right.
Right. Like you've got like right now.
If I took off my glasses.
This is MC Escher.
Exactly.
The rest of the room is Escher.
Right.
What other artists would you say have inspired you? Because you definitely trend towards realism.
Right.
Which I was watching recently some stuff from Vincent Price from St. Louis. You're from St. Louis, correct?
Right. St. Louis.
Vincent Price eventually got into curating art, collecting art.
Right.
He had an artist fund, and he said that one of the things that was interesting to him about modern art and postmodern art is that the invention of the photograph allowed the artist's eye to wander because his main charge was not realism.
Right. Yeah. Once the photograph was invented, the artist no longer needed to.
It was not chained to
right.
life.
They no longer had to be confined.
Right.
Essentially, there was a lot more freedom, but with the photograph, and we were talking earlier with modern art, or kind of the start of modern art, kind of the negative impact that both of those had was, well, it was good that anyone could just kind of decide, okay, I want to, do some art and, dabble in this. At the same time, now that anyone can be an artist, I mean, it loses its prestige almost, you could say,
I think that it's also, what it did in addition to freeing the artist's eye was that it freed the burden of the art from skill.
Right.
And put it on ideas, put it on intelligence, put it on imagination.
Right.
Unfortunately, as is the code oftentimes with artists, you do not want to explain your own work, right? This is what this means, this is what this means. If that's not what you see, you're doing it wrong, right? So there's sort of this wall that the artist has to put up between his or herself and the meaning of his or her work.
Right.
And once that is constructed, and the artist is no longer chained to realism, all you have to do is put something forth and say, well, you just don't get it.
Right.
Right? Because I am not...
Right.
I'm not even supposed to explain my art.
Right.
So you can have fools running around. It's like the Emperor's New Clothes, right? Mm-hmm. Fools running around making art.
Right.
And saying that it means things that you don't understand, when in reality...
It does it right.
And I don't know what it means, and somebody fell in love with it and gave me $1,000 for it, so it's genius.
And a lot of the time, it's context. You might get a Manet painting where it's just a figure, a woman, and then there's just all these what look to be just crazy colors for, the face, and just totally out there, but... A lot of with art, and you're just kind of like, well, why is that worth $1 million? My 10-year-old could, color that. But a lot of it has to do with context, like what we were saying, with what's going on at the time. And then that's why something may be worth more, not necessarily because it's, fine art. Right.
And it's like I had a professor for an art history class, and what is the current period called? It's not postmodernism anymore. It's something past that, right? Like they're calling it. What are they calling it? Like art right now.
I should know this.
Anyway, we were studying art from 1980s to present.
Yeah, basically, yeah, just...
And it was just weird shit. Just weird shit.
Right.
Like, there was a movie, there was like a 10-minute movie somebody made about the cremaster muscle.
Okay,
which is, I believe, what allows... It either
sounds
allows...
like Dadaism, just a bunch of random stuff. Yeah.
It either allows an erection or allows an ejaculation. I'm not sure. Right. But... just crazy shit. And I said, "No, what is it that makes this art? Because I could do this."
Right.
And she looks at me, and her main defense of this art was, "Yeah, but you didn't."
Exactly.
Yeah,
like,
but you didn't.
Oh, I could do that. Okay, then go do it.
Right.
And that's kind of the whole idea of modern art.
And I think one of the strengths of concurrent writing is the fact that if you still don't understand writing, you still can't do it, right? That is one bastion of the literary world that maybe the visual arts don't have. Like sculpture is still a little bit more refined than painting,
right?
Because you've got to learn how to do that,
right? Because you're doing a lot of form,
right?
Like you can do reliefs, which you're taking away. Or just actual sculpture where you're adding like additive sculpture. So yeah, you're doing a lot.
So I think that's more of an artistic brother of writing than painting. Right. Because if you don't know how to make a sentence work, no one still understands what it is.
And I think that's the most frustrating thing with being an artist at all is having an idea or something that you want to do and put out there into the world, but not having the skill to be able to do that.
Absolutely.
I can't tell you how many times I wanted to sit down and do a painting, and then I try and I realize, okay, I just can't do it. You know, like I just don't have the tools.
I often tell the tale of Larks and Crows, which I am currently writing for hashtag Hot and Sticky Summer Novel Writing Challenge. It is my sweetheart novel. I've been trying to write this thing since high school, and every time I try to write it, I sit down and I realize, no, I can't do this. What the hell was I thinking? I got to go do something else for a little while. Try to sharpen the knife. You know, mix some more paints and figure out exactly what I'm doing here. But hopefully this time around, I can get it done. But yeah, I don't know.
But kind of, I guess the difference would be with the visual arts. If it's something that you're having trouble with, you can always go to maybe something that's similar. Like if you're trying to, let's just say, paint something, like you can't paint, I don't know, like you can't get the roof, like the texture of a roof, right? You know, you can go to something else, you can use different tools, so I guess, I don't know, but you're able to kind of almost work your way up to something. Like you're able to kind of get to the point where, okay, you've developed enough to be able to do that.
And at first there I thought you were going to say something like you can go look at another painter and see how he or she did
and
it.
that too.
But yeah, you can do that with writing
like
as well.
Like a little bit of a reverse engineering. You're looking and saying, okay, well, how did they do that? Because a lot of the more modern painters, you can actually see their brushstrokes. Now, earlier pieces, especially with the Renaissance, it was no, you don't do your brushstrokes. That's a no. You don't do any of that. So it's a lot harder because everything is just so smoothed out that you're like, well, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't know how
in fact, that's one of the things that Leonardo was most acclaimed for, was the fact that you couldn't see a single stroke on his paintings. You couldn't see where things came from, where things went into. Everything just appeared on the canvas.
Because they were going for just ultra realism. You know, you don't. There's no strokes in the mess. So,
but it's interesting that occurs in the writer's world as well, building sort of like a palette. Right. So, for example, with this reading of Larks and Crows, I am trying to incorporate different novels this writing of Larks and Crows. I am trying to incorporate different novels that I did not before. So when I get stuck, I'll pick up a little bit of something and flip through it for a minute.
And now there's so much out there that no one's a complete original, so you're pulling stuff from everywhere. Everywhere and anything. Even Mark Rothko, who's just known for his basic just blocks of color. You know, you think, well, what the hell could have inspired, you know, I mean, they're just blocks of color, but actually, if you go back and you look at a lot of Etruscan, like ancient Etruscan art, and a lot of...
the first thing that came to my mind was Warhol. Because just
right.
the separation of different colors with
right.
the same... Yeah.
Right, like you can actually trace that back to the bands of color that they were doing in a lot of their registers. So it's kind of interesting, because he obviously would have seen that. Mark Rothko, he was that like 1950, 40?
Oh, okay.
So, you know, if he was a student of art, you know, he would have seen these things. So it's just kind of interesting that even something that you think is just so simple and that, you know, they just slapped it on, so there's no real like thought or any real inspiration behind it. But no, you can trace a lot of things back.
It's also interesting how you pick those things up and you don't realize it.
Right.
Right. I don't know how many times that I've been, and I've never straight plagiarized or never caught myself straight plagiarizing anything. But it's interesting when you go back and you realize their influence is in your work from things that you can recognize now.
Right.
Because, for example, like Faulkner, I'm more familiar with Faulkner now than I was when I started. But I had read Faulkner when I really started writing.
Right.
So it's interesting to go back and see where something from Faulkner may have popped up.
Right.
I didn't know it was influenced by Faulkner at the time,
right.
but now I can see it.
Yeah. I think it's kind of harder, or at least it was back in the days when there was apprenticeships, because, you know, you were being taught under somebody.
Yeah.
So you know, like you were saying with writing, it's a little bit easier to kind of pull back and have your own voice. But when you're day in and day out having someone teach you, and I mean they're teaching you their style, like they're teaching you their way of doing things, and each, you know, master is different.
Yeah.
So, you know, like with Cimabue and Giotto, you know, like you can see, but you can see where in the Madonna enthroned with angels and a child
from Giotto,
you can see, right? And well, Cimabue did one.
Oh, he did. Okay.
Right. He did one.
They also both had Davids, don't they? Is it No. The tradition of Davids doesn't go back that far, does it? The tradition of doing Davids goes to like Donatello, right? Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, you're right. They have several.
Right.
They've done the same scene.
Right. So they essentially did the same thing, but you can definitely see where Giotto was starting to fine-tune what Cimabue had taught him. So he was starting to develop a more realistic style, and that's kind of where I believe, like, where this idea of realism and perfection like started and just kind of took off from there. Because you could see in the Madonna's robes in Cimabue's how you can just see almost not hatchwork, but like you can see the lines
right
in it, and it's a conscious decision. It's not that he didn't know how to paint fabric, just like the Byzantines. They knew that people's feet, when they did their mosaics, didn't go out, but
right.
It was a conscious decision about what they wanted the piece to look like.
It's also, Giotto is the first one who really incorporated depth perception into his work, right? Mm-hmm. But I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that this Giotto Cimabue?
Yeah, Cimabue was his teacher.
That is also...
He saw him drawing in the dirt. One day he saw Giotto. He was a sheep herder, I believe, and he was just bored drawing in the dirt one day, and Cimabue saw him, and he's like, he was drawing a sheep in the dirt, and it was, I guess, the best damn sheep that he had ever seen drawn in the dirt, and he was like, come here, you're my student, and it was just...
Well, and they also, if I'm not mistaken, this is where I was going earlier, is that... like Leonardo and who was Leonardo's teacher? I'm not going to think it off the top of my head.
Right, I can't remember.
But I think Giotto and Cimabue began the tradition of the student has become the master, and the student retires the master.
Right.
Am I wrong with that?
Right, which
That
I'm going to come
at
back
one
to
point,
that because I'm taking a Renaissance Rivals class.
Shimabue came up
Yeah.
and said, okay,
Right.
you've learned all I can teach you, I'm done.
Right.
I'm retiring. Am I wrong with that?
No,
Didn't
and
that
even,
happen?
And even going into the time of Picasso, his father was an artist, actually. And one day he saw Picasso drawing, and once he saw that, because I guess he did this just amazing drawing, his father was like, that's it.
I'm done.
There's nothing I could do because
Your work is the best work I can do.
Right, because his father had spent years, and he was, an okay artist, so he spent years just trying to be, a decent artist.
Right.
And here comes Picasso, he's like, I don't have a chance. So
Yeah.
he just stopped right there and put all his effort in his son Picasso becoming something.
Yeah.
So it's kind of it's kind of interesting. Just, how people are like, nope, I'm done.
So that's all we've got time for this time. If you like this sort of thing, I would appreciate it if you hit the like and subscribe buttons below, and jump into the comments section and tell Alexis something that she said that was particularly embarrassing and or stupid.
Which was a lot.